Peace. Right now, there's no students here, but the school is open. As people become more aware of my class, willingly students arrive and start coming back. Um, this is the time that I'm trying to get here. I've been here since 5 o'clock. Anyone that's in here, ask any questions. There'll be stuff I get into as we go along. All right, Rome, peace. No, Rome. I have two new books out. I have The Reel of 2021 and 2020. That's a book that came out in February. The definitive guide um, to all the best hip hop in the last 2 years. At least 400 pages of over 800 albums covered, analyzed, built on over 250 artists. But I recently released Art on Art, creations that born this hip hop writer element. So it's basically a collection of my poems, prose, and verses that that have come out on other people's songs and things like that. So um, I'll do that. I'll do that. Okay. Again, I don't. There'll be there's a lot of places, a lot of interviews I've been doing to build on the books, these new books. I have more books. They're expected to be at least two more books I'm releasing this year. Um, one of them is relevant to this class. It's the Peace Course book. So this is not a book that you need if you're a student in my course. It'd be nice if you have it, but it's basically my my understanding on a deeper level, maybe a more artistic level. Um, and that'll be coming out soon too. I have a date for it, but when it's official, when it's all done, then I'll let people know. Um, had to get a lot of these ideas. Some of them are more complex. That's why they're written down. Some of them are more beautifully written. So um, things that I would share. But there's nothing in there that I wouldn't share with a student that was ready for it. Of course, though, putting it in a book makes it possible that anyone could be ready for it willingly. Right? But I appreciate that, Rome. And again, my books are on Amazon, but if anybody wants to support me directly, I autograph copies. It's obvious I get a higher percentage of profit when you buy it directly from me. So you can email me for that if you're interested. Um, if you've ever read any of my work on my site, premierhiphop.com, just my creative reviews, my features, then you know the type of creativity that art would be, um, and also the real of 2021. You know, if you're trying to get into this hip hop and this massive world of so-called underground hip hop, that's the place to go to. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So email me and I can give you all the uh, information on the books and everything like that. You know. Since people mention it, until through this weekend, I do have a special deal with my books. So um, after this weekend, I won't go. Just this weekend. So let me know if you're interested in any of those books. All right. It's a lot of books coming because I have spent years putting out work everywhere. And every time for the last 5 to 10 years, easily the last 10 plus years, if you see articles, if you see work that I put out, if you see interviews I've done, these are all for free. I received no money for that. You know what I mean? I received no money for that. So when people buy my books and stuff like that, it helps support me a lot. It supports a lot. And it's a joy to have to be able to create something. And put that together. But I digress. Thank you, Mikhail, a lot. Peace. All right. With a few people in here doing the knowledge, I want to go through some questions that I didn't get to answer last session 2 weeks ago. Last week I was at a law school, but I didn't have my microphone. I forgot my microphone, and I my laptop doesn't work in receiving audio, right? So I needed a microphone, and it doesn't play audio either unless I hook it up to speakers. So I'd be okay without the speakers, but I need the microphone. All right. So a couple of questions that I thought I'd leave for this class session from the last time because they were a little bit heavy. I think one of the questions that the God asked me was, "Is Jacob Jacob from the Bible?" Most of the elders, I am not one to build heavily on the Bible. I don't spend my time reading it. I've looked through passages. I don't care to get much from the Bible. I have it as a reference, but it's more to stop the confusion if somebody references something in it. It's really a reference book for me. It's not really a book that I use to show and prove that the original man is God. Um, a lot of people use it analytically like that. The history of the elders, they used it very analytically. So it was very crucial. It was very important. get some more light in this room. Okay. Stanzas. There we go. Okay, just trying to get more light, but take it away from my eyes as I'm sitting here. It should be better. All right, here we go. Now, as far as that question is Yaqub Jacob from the Bible, most elders that taught me, I remember Ibn al-Jamar, who to me is the greatest builder I've ever met in my life, using the Bible and using it constructively, usefully. And he had said that. And because remember in that story, he's separating the sheep and everything like that. So the parallels are there, you know. And again, I don't get much out of it though. You see the parallels, and now what do you do? I don't gather much insight myself aside from that. But yeah, I would say yes. There's a question in the chat. Let me get that before I go to the next question. I only have 3 here. Let's see. True Self, peace. You said, are the 22 points of the universal flag in any way connected to 2,200 miles in the 4th degree and the 1 to 14? Good point. Good thinking. You should always be thinking mathematically when you're playing with the degrees and stuff. But I've never heard that. You know, I never heard that from any of the elders that taught me about the universal flag. So, and again, like, after all these years, I don't get much out of going too deep on parallels and using mathematics as coincidences. All right. I feel like that a coincidence in mathematics is something to be highlighted, but a lot of times it's used as the end game. And so, no, I don't see that. You know what I mean? Because remember, the 22 points, it really only has relevance because the 22 is victory and wisdom, culture. So it just happens to be that way in the flag. And a lot of times in my mind, I think all numbers are right and exact, you know? So to say that this was the one number it had to be means that other numbers would be incorrect. And I couldn't necessarily say that, you know? So I never looked into saying that there's a particular reasoning behind it being 22 points and whatnot, you know? Although if I remember correctly in the, you know, some of the plus lessons in the universal flag, they do have an understanding of how they see it as far as being deep in some way. All right, Quatis, that's peace. All right, just again, if you're on a law school in Mecca page, you literally can watch as the days go on. Last week's session, because I was here and I just started coming back. So my first week back in a law school, Inf Mega came through. He had bought my books and he had, you know, looked through them and stuff like that. Definitely could. No, you can't finish my books in the time that he had them. But he interviewed me about my history and about my work and stuff like that. So I think it'll be useful. There's one video already up. Hasn't been up for too long. So All right. Let me get the link for that. So that way. Okay, where's the? Yeah, YouTube sometimes misses links. Like, oh, there we go. I'm just like looking correctly. Here we go. Yeah, that was the first part. All right. Yeah, so any questions? Quatis, good to see you here. Divine Truth Allah, peace, light visible. Anybody have any questions? Anything that they would like me to cover? Um, Also, sometimes too, let me know where you're at, like where you're building at, because a lot of you watch this online, but I don't really know where you're at or what you would need. Okay, I say that to be my student, you'd have to contact me outside of the classroom. But that doesn't mean that you really aren't my student in some way. Um, so we only deal with each other through this medium, not online and not via, text or anything else. Um, Make sure that you come to the class with a good sense of what you would like to know or what is confusing you and stuff. Because there's really no question that I will, um, bomb you for. Um, let's say, for example, I know more about the student and I realize that their question isn't good um, for the level that they should be at, then I tell you that. And we should be able to take that kind of criticism, but I'm not one to lay it on um, in that kind of way. You know, sometimes the truth hurts. You know. All right, these other questions that the God gave me. What do you look for when examining a student? Because of the wisdom build degree, I don't know if I like the word examine. Um, Seems to be that a teacher makes their own choice of who they're going to teach, though, but that's not always the case. Um, the reason I say that is because I teach here voluntarily, and so anyone that can walk in can learn. So what happens is that, let's say if I don't care for a person, unless they're completely disrespectful, I can't just throw them away. And it's not for me. I wouldn't do that thing where you start to be disrespectful to someone because you don't really want them there, and you're not the type of person that they're not the type of person you want to teach. So I have to take away like and dislike. Some people can walk in and I think their whole demeanor is like, lacking. To put it that way. But this is I'm not just teaching the students that I would like to teach. This isn't a class that I designed um, where I get to do what I'm going to do only. I teach whoever walks in because this is a service that's being provided by the school in the name of my own course here. Um, so I don't immediately get to turn people away just because I think they won't learn. The reason I say that is because the longer you teach, though, the longer you share things. So let's keep it as simple as possible to all humanity. The longer you share things, if you're doing it to really share and not just to exalt yourself, that you've given these blessings of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to the world, and the peons that are all around you, right? That's a dark hymn word, peon, right? Um, I think that the more that you share sincerely, the more that you start to realize that um, you're not always sharing with people. You're going to realize that certain people aren't really good at learning. You know, a lot of times, like other people will do it. Like a lot of times, we have to teach things even if we know the person won't get it. Like for example, with your children and stuff, or with other small children, right, or things like that. Or, but there's all type of techniques that I'll use to overload someone, knowing that they'll get only a little bit of it, so that they get the idea that learning is taking place here. Because I know they won't remember anything, so I want them to get the idea that learning is taking place. This is a tactic used so that way they can come back. You know what I mean? I don't use it for that reason though. Okay, I might use that with other people that I know. You know what I mean? Uh, that I have a relationship with, like my children, or younger children and the family and stuff, like my nieces or something like that. But when I teach here, I try to let people know exactly what they've walked into, so that way the school is represented immediately. People know what they walked into. And now I'm going to show you things so you get a decision of what you want to do. These are the strategies to learn how to present the school to the world. You know what I mean? In this way, I can tell who's not really going to come back. Um, it could be all type of reasons, so I can't really say like what I'm looking for. It's certainly not like a vibe. I'm not just getting feelings and stuff. I don't go with feelings. Feelings are very ill-equipped, because the reason the reason feelings are ill-equipped, like your own feelings, is because you're catching their feelings. But remember, when people come to the school, though, they generally don't know things. So whether they think they know, or they do, or they know that they don't know, they're both in the same boat. They don't know anything. You know what I mean? They think they know. They don't know anything. They're sure that they don't know. Then they don't know. They certainly don't know, right? So if you're trying to catch a vibe off people like this, which they are in confusion, you wouldn't really know if their vibe is a negative vibe to ever wanting to come back or anything like that. You have to see more, and you have to engage them in certain ways to ask them questions and stuff, so that way you can learn more about them. So when you examine a student, I'm trying to see if there'll be a sincere learner, and then if they're not going to be a very sincere learner, then what I try to do is to make sure that they know what this nation is about when they walked in. Okay, they know that what they may not come back for, they know what it is. Um, Everything else is the person's perception. You know what I mean? I, for one, know I deal with many perceptions from students, because I'm not what people would expect. On all type of levels. On all type of levels. Matisse, you gave me a huge question here, a build. I'm going to read that in a little bit. All right. Just give me a moment. I'll be back in a minute. Just have to use the restroom quickly. let's see what you wrote here, Quartiz. All right, I'll go with Quartiz's comment first. You know what? I was thinking also too, like how I examine a student. Um, I, at the beginning, I'm just there to receive them, and every student is just based on finding out what they want to know, and then after that, whether they're good learners. You know what I mean? And if they're good learners, then I try to put them in positions where they can learn how to learn on their own. That's very important. Quatis, you said I wanted to build in today's degree and ask questions in that regard as well. It's a lot. Might take a second to pull all down. Knowledge being born to knowledge. Using this degree as a way. Okay. When you say today's degree refers to in the 1 to 40. So when you say today's math, we're talking about the math, knowledge born. All right. Today's degree would be the 19th degree in the 1 to 40. So just to clarify that. Using this degree okay. As a way to stay aware of thoughts, knowledge behind a brought about reality. Aware of thoughts behind a brought about reality. So it's almost like it's retrospective then. Right? A lot of builds don't go backwards. You know what I mean? That's why I pause right there. Not necessarily wrong, just an interesting vantage point. The thought of what reality is brought to you versus the thought that comes from intention. So basically what is and what you intended it to be, the differences. All right. And dealing with which one affects my life more. I'm trying to think how one's reality could affect one less than their own thoughts of intention. Most people don't have thoughts of intention. They're just hopes. All right. So intention is different than hopes or what they expect to happen. Intention is very different. It's very conscious, and dealing with which one affects my life more, finding the balance through a culture. And then got to wondering about the energy it takes to push one's intentions. Is it a push or a pull? It might be both, right? Are intentions magnetic or are they polar and therefore must be pushed? It depends, because I see your intentions are just what the plan, the history that you're writing in advance. So the way I see it, when you look at things in this way, the push-pull, to actually fulfill your intentions, there are things that you will have to pull. You have to pull together resources. You have to pull together the things that need to be in place and the things that need to be done. So there is pull, right? Like literally your own abilities, your own works. But then there is also a push, though, because now you're pushing. Maybe part of this intention is to also push your things out. Peace. To push your works out and what have you. So I would say it's a combination of both. I wouldn't say that it's one thing. You said, are intentions magnetic or are they polar? All right, I read that. And due to being an energy focused output, is that why it is easier to fall into belief? Sort of where the inconsistencies lie, because one sees it as being out of one's control. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that's a major breaking point. I guess what I'm asking is what influences thought? Is it just desire or want to do a certain thing? For those who have to survive, it seems to be circumstances, or that circumstances are the weight one has to navigate. Perhaps all my thoughts here are incomplete, a bit fumbly, if that's even a word. No, but I like it. But this is what today's mathematics does for me. Okay. One plans and sometimes other things happen. Does one go against what comes in the sacrifice of their intentions, not mistaking this with going against one's principles that is different. Say you're an architect, you get small home and church contracts regularly. Do you go against it? It's coming to you in order to build high rises because that is your intention. Yeah, it's this is always going to happen, right? Because we're forced in the world, an outer world that is creating at the same time and also impacting. And in this particular time, we're dealing with the 10%, right? That have made a society and a structured in such a way that the obstacles always impair us, right? So these are all things, right? The truth is that the way that we build is always fluctuating, right? Um, Let me see. A very strong concept, Quartis, because when you intention, and intention, I could tell you from experience that some of the intent I had when I was a young man about what I would be, um, to see some of them be fulfilled today, despite all of the sacrifices, and for those things to have precedence over so many other things that happened along the way that could stifle it, and did stifle it, um, really shows the power of the intention of what you push and pull, but there's a push and pull on both sides, right? Intriguing concept. Right? Ace York face, peace. Right? Who did I miss here? All right. Divine Truth Allah, you said you have a question. God, in the knowledge cipher degree, in the 1 to 14. Okay. You just wrote so many knowledges here. Is it the 11th? Is it the 10th? I'm not sure. It said the devil's 100% weak and wicked. We're not keeping obey the laws of Islam. And in the born degree, it says let's see, continuation here. Has 35 to 50 years to clean himself up. So knowing that he's 100% weak and wicked, do we base teaching on one's ways and actions, or don't teach at all based on the degree? Well, no, okay. Do not use any degree as a rule book, okay? That's not analyzing. That's not getting understanding from it. So none of the 120 lessons are a rule book. It says this, you do that. They may be something you say, well, every single time we do that, like we will no longer search for that which does not exist, etc., things like that, right? But in general, um, you're analyzing the degrees. Now with the 1 to 14, the born degree is talking about engaging them, right? And then yet in the non-cipher degree is telling it, chop their heads off. The real thing to learn is that all of this is details of history, different moments in history. All right. They're different moments in history and they contradict each other. You cannot do one with it, and you cannot do them both at the same time. You literally couldn't have those policies at the same time. Right. So Yeah, that's my simple answer. Why would we don't follow anything. You have to get your understanding of how you see that. What would be the way to deal with people? You know, the truth is that because we're responsible for all of humanity, what do we do with people that we know are going to be, forget about wicked, but weak, that they may be prone to wickedness, but they have to be dealt with, right? Do we exile all of them? Do we not deal with them at all? Or do we deal with them? You know, so it's not an easy answer. And those degrees, ninth and 10th degrees and 1 to 14, they kind of show you that they're not an easy answer and have been dealt with differently throughout history. Um, I would say honestly, it's a little bit of both. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of both. You know, go back. Thank you, Light Visible. Joel, you said, what are some ways of being able to commit the 1 to 40 to memory? With the enrollment, I noticed it follows a pattern from individual society, macro. True. That's right. That's right. The C lesson follows a story, so it flows easily. The 1 to 14 has a flow, also more like introduction to civilization, definitely. However, the 1 to 40, we're working on understanding it. However, have difficulty quoting word for word. I follow day to day with the degree. All right, so what you're gonna have to do, right, is commit them to memory by not worrying about the whole set, but focusing on particular degrees and making sure they're in long-term memory. Long-term memory by repetition, long-term memory by engaging them. Writing down in your journals. You should all have journals. Writing down questions about them. What don't I know about this degree? What are things I could? Why? What is my understanding, right? And at any stage, what do I think of it? What do I think it means? Right? All of these are crucial, and they will help you make it part of your life. And when it is part of your life, then it'll be easier to memorize. All right. Right. So how to cap it on cap. This is the real drill. You know, this is the real hard part. And you know, they've got to be individualized here. It's a bigger set. You know what I mean? And if you break it down in parts, then sometimes they can make sense. You know, definitely writing your history and you know, nature itself. The first 10 degrees would be in that vein. You know, definitely the 20s. You know, about Yakub, right? The 30s are about how we'll deal with the devil. You know, and they transition, right? But you just got to you have to memorize them individually as far as what is the crucial aspects here. You know what I mean? How does this degree deal with knowledge of God? How does this degree deal with understanding equality? You know what I mean? You have to have understanding attached to it so it can make more sense. You know? I hope that answers the question. Peace, God.
So be careful with this member. I didn't know you were recording like that, bro. That they call him. You see yourself all over the place.
Yeah, I'm not got you recording. I'm shooting the class now
peace,
too.
Man.
Yeah.
Real peace, man. Freedom of Allah.
Yeah.
That's my brother, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, I can use the restroom.
Yeah,
I'm in the yard.
All right, God. Peace, God.
No, bro.
Indeed.
Thanks, man. I've been fasting, so I mean.
Here you go. All right, let's see. Let me know if that helps, Jarrell. All right. I think I have one more question that I have here from the guy. Where is it? All right. Can you ever have total peace without chaos? Total peace means there's never a lack of confusion, but that doesn't mean that it's a level of confusion, right? And chaos, depending on what we think, it could be anything. Let's say we're always building, so there's always going to be something that causes confusion because we don't know. We're always looking, we're always searching. But that chaos doesn't have to be negative. You know what I mean? Right? But theoretically, we're always we're always at knowledge add-on cipher. We're always getting to knowledge add-on cipher. So because we always get to that, it also means that there's always something unknown that we were delving into, something that we are creating. So we absolutely are always thinking of something else. You know what I mean? All right. Right. I don't think I have any more questions from the God that he left. He gave me a lot, but I gotta ask him if I answer all of these. Yeah, he's giving me a lot of questions, so I gotta see if I answered everything. Peace.
Happy Malcolm X. Peace to the God in the house. And the earth. All right. Let me go first. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, they got two? Ah, okay.
just as you said, the 1 to 40 definitely makes sense to me. Sometimes it gets hard to retain throughout time because some are extremely long. Definitely takes a lot of patience. After you acknowledge 120, just, think about them. Take a degree with you a week, and try to think about something profound about them or research. You know what I mean? Try to see where they relate to in the books you've read or the books that you are reading now, what degrees go with them. There's all different types of exercises you can do, you know? Yeah, but I will definitely, I will be here till 8 o'clock. Okay, so
So he asked me to help him Memorial Weekend. I said, oh my gosh. So I guess that's what I could try and do. But I did tell him that she I have something to do. Remember when he called me and she I took one right now. I said, get ready. Get ready.
Quatishi said, I've been struggling with the notion of bringing knowledge to born and having it be heightened by way of an interactive insight or having it be a positive add-on to all who might be in position to. Okay. Whew. All right. See, when I was talking about analyzing a student, right? This also calls for me to say that the student always have to remember not to always be so hard on themselves. Quatis, this sounds like we're about to reach that territory here for you. You've been struggling with the notion of bringing knowledge to born and having it be heightened by way of an interactive insight or having it be positive add-on to all who might be in a position to draw from it. It being a creative thing. And I have recently been coming into the realization that thoughts and ideas are different points of awareness. Indeed, they are. Ideas are things that one can do. They seem to be closer to gaining the wisdom through the experience of the experiment. And thought is more so the concept. The goal stripped of the detail of how one would go about bringing that thought further. Agreed. So that is why I think of knowledge born as being the thought behind creating reality. I get it. If we would like to say, what is that thing called? It would be, you're saying it'd be knowledge born, right? That process, you know? Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. Don't necessarily disagree. All right, Shaquem, peace, God. Do for self. All right. I haven't seen everybody in a week. Let me know where you're at. I think talk about this for a little bit. Quartz gets very philosophical. You're definitely not out of line with the way that I've always taught. So I love the ideas here. The first thing is what bothers me. You struggling with the notion of bringing knowledge to board, having it be heightened by way of interactive insight, or having it be a positive add-on to all. I think sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Do things greatly, because at certain points you'll have to engage in its practice of how you did those things greatly, or those great things in front of many people. And the stuff that you did indoors will be seen outdoors. You know what I mean? And sometimes it doesn't seem like it'll do anything, but it does. You know what I mean? It really does. Yeah, not every build is gonna change the world. Not every insight that you have is gonna be enlightenment. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's gonna take a long time to see that the positive things you do. It takes a while to see how they were, whether they were augmented by knowing supreme mathematics or not. You know, it takes living to see this stuff. You know what I mean? And it'll take time. You know, I think that we're looking for results when we should just see whether things that we love to do, the things that we definitely will do, are we doing them better? You know what I mean? Right? That's all that counts. You know, quick thing. It's funny because the guy just came and somebody had asked me about a video that he was in, and they would talk about the lessons translated and stuff like that. You know, and I'm gonna generalize this build. I might get into it with him at another time, just for clarification. But the supreme alphabet isn't holy because it's in English. You know, it doesn't make English holy. You know what I'm saying? Just like for example, if you go to another, like Spanish has a few more letters, but they have all of the letters that English has. When you get up to the seventh letter, it'll still be G, but the word for God doesn't start with G. right? It's Dios. So the video was on Law School of Mecca page with the gods that I know out there in Venezuela. Once they were saying that, it was saying that it's not valid if you don't say God. Like, then you can't make that alphabet. You'll have to find another word that fits into there, but you can. You know what I'm saying? Um, the Supreme Alphabet technically is based on the English alphabet. So it's applying the principles of Supreme Math to the English alphabet. So they are placing it in the confines of there. Now, the seventh letter in any other language, though, then would have to reflect something righteous, something divine, and they could find the word for it. However, this idea that it has to be the English words or like the English words kind of makes English holier than thou. You know what I mean? And that's not, English is not the point. And I'm saying that as a writer that uses English. You know what I'm saying? And so there's no bias against English with that. You know what I mean? My greatest creations are using the English language. You know, so that's just a side note about how we deal with the alphabet. You know what I mean? In any respect, numbers are always going to be the same throughout the world. So that 7 is always going to be God. The mathematics is the key, right? And then now in the languages and the alphabets that exist throughout the planet of the original people, how would they apply the principles of supreme math into their working alphabet, right? And that would really be the key, you know what I mean? Quatija said it would be interesting to see that with cultures that use symbols as their letters, right? It would have to be something totally different. And that's why I said that type of religiosity isn't there. I feel like we're losing the point of the whole thing. You know, neither supreme math or supreme alphabet make the existence of the black God real. You know what I mean? They define it, though. They articulate it. And so we're at these moments in life where this true and living God came with the knowledge again in a more profound way and was able to articulate it. But it doesn't make it exist by doing that. It already and always has existed. Okay? District 120 said, is that because things we have here in America are all named or titled using those symbols in the alphabet? Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, look, we're in America here, so that's why. But when I see the comments on videos and stuff like that, I could tell that the exclusivity, this is mine, this isn't anyone else's, is really trying to, people try to creep that into the nation. And that's not really what it is. You know? I'm looking at knowledge to born, those ideas behind created reality. I was recently reading on the act of building society, and it was dealing with the aspect of manhood. Yeah, knowledge to born. Here's a watered down quote of something I had questions about. Manhood is not a tool of aggression, but a social, cultural construct intended to promote the psychological development of boys into men. Hmm. You know what's interesting is that everyone creates something for themselves. It's always the people that want to dismantle the roles that people are and replace them with other roles that tell you that the roles that they're trying to replace are imaginary, or constructs is always the word that gets used in sociology. Read that again. Manhood is not a tool of aggression, but a social cultural construct intended to promote the psychological development of boys into men, capable of supporting the security and prosperity of society. When the ideals of manhood are lost, a distorted society becomes disillusioned at the hands of internal and external threats. I would say that there is a definition of manhood that definitely funnels the humanity of man and his abilities in order to function and further the society. So, weak men create hard times. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. What might those threats be? The exaggeration of manhood. So you would get an exaggeration and fighting of external threats, right? Preemptive strikes. You know what I'm saying? Basically, what the U.S. does. You know what I mean? Why is it that weak men create hard times, and for who? Remember, in degrees that says that the devil is made weak and wicked. No one is born wicked, so something has to be so weak that it becomes wicked. It has no ability to naturally engage itself in survival without taking and without manipulating, because it isn't strong enough mentally or physically to have the will and or the ability, uh, to get through. You know. Um, where are we looking here? Would it be because the roles we should play are changed, or do you see or think that weaker men are being created in society? I do think that weaker men are being created in society because um, the thing about society is that as you birth the next generation of strong men, um, they replace the men that were before. If you have a society of weak men, you cannot get you you cannot be replaced. You know what I mean? And so that's very important. Young boys having less interaction with men who know how to guide them through the different stages in their life. That's definitely has been a case though in our communities. You know what I mean? Where we see less guidance of that, all of that. Absolutely, all of that. That affects, you know. Remember, the weak man will always take the easy way out. Okay? They are mired in survival, so the idea of thriving is irrelevant. So long-term goals cannot be met. Instant gratification is the measure, and a lot of stuff is sacrificed that should not have ever been sacrificed. You know, right? Do for self. You said, I see today's supreme math as taking my knowledge through a process so I can manifest it. Everything that I learned from life experience and research is going through a progression before I manifest it. Interesting. Okay. See it? Real interesting concept of knowledge to born. You know what I mean? When I think of knowledge to born, I also think of the alphabet. I also think of self savior. Um, I think of when we talk about knowledge born, right? It's this idea of how knowledge is disseminated, like how it comes into fruition for others. So even though we have this whole process we think about, we also think about the simple process of the dissemination of the knowledge you have. And that there are moments that knowledge has to be disseminated, right? And how can it exist in a place where it didn't exist before? How do you make knowledge born? How will knowledge be brought somewhere that it did not exist before? You know what I mean? So that means it has to be given in a way that is palatable, in a way that people can use it. You know, so a lot of your thought exercises have to be in that way. You know what I mean? When you achieve something, you think, how could I have achieved this? How could I have thought of this? You know what I'm saying? Right? Um, how could I explain this and have a list of different types of people that you would explain it to? Young child, older people, you know what I'm saying? The well-educated, the not so well-educated. And there's strategy. Like people think that teaching people that are educated is, no, it could be very difficult. They think they know everything. You know what I mean? So things that are simple are not really that are profound and simple go over their head, right? Another reminder, if you email me and I don't email you back in like a day or two, please feel free to forward it back to me. You know what I mean? And just be like, just a reminder, you're not annoying me. Okay. You're pushing yourself up to the head of the class. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what, I want to be heard. I want my questions answered. I want to add on. I have no problem with that. That's true, Almighty. I admit I could have articulated about the train right now. No, that's peace. That's peace. How many people have their journals? You know what I mean? How many of us are working on memorizing our understanding that we find equipped and useful, right? Very important. Things to work on, right? When we talk about knowledge, the born, explaining the mathematics in a linear fashion. Think of one idea that is true, that is right and exact, and take it from knowledge to born, right? Describe that process. Then the exercise.
Peace. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Sunez Allah.
Peace.
What's up, man? You good?
It's peace, guy.
Yeah. I walked through it.
Indeed. I was explaining something right now.
I listened on the way, actually.
Oh, that's peace. These are important exercises, taking things from knowledge to born, the practice of that. Then when you get deeper with it, when you could take an example and explain knowledgeable knowledge, wisdom, understand, going all the way to born, you can explain that process as a linear process. Because that's what you're doing when you're dealing with, supreme mathematics. that's what you're doing with the process. You're going back to things you've already done,
Right.
and saying, "Oh, this was born, this was made, this was done, this happened. How did it go from knowledge to born?" And you're analyzing life. You're analyzing what has happened. It's only when you get good at that you can get good at actually writing the history in advance, what you will do, and how that will go with knowledge, wisdom, understanding, right? Culture, power, equality, right? The outer, and then that fruit, God, build, and born, right? So these are exercises that go in the journal. Every student I teach, I ask them to have their own journal. So one that I don't look at, one that's for themselves. You try to write consistently about your life, about the things that you see, the things that you're studying, right? Your thoughts on things, and the bills that you have, how you see the day's math and things like that, just to scribble. And see, what people don't get is that when you have these things, we shouldn't be explaining things, right? We should truly know and understand them. So a lot of times the real benefit of the journal is that there you learn your honesty with yourself, where no one's gonna look at it. I never look at a student's journal, but you open it up and you're like, yo, today's knowledge born, but I don't have nothing for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything for it. And that's what you write in there. I don't have anything for this. I'm totally stuck on this. It is gonna help people when they get into degrees. Like I think it was Jarrell, you're on the 1 to 40. A lot of these are hard to memorize. And if you really think about the ones that are hard to memorize, right, is because when you get to the next one, right, you say, okay, I got it in short-term memory. I spent the whole day quoting it. The next day, I go to the new one. That one's real new, brand new, exotic. And now I don't remember the other one. It's because the other one has nothing in it that would be used. It isn't distinct. You know what I mean? So your own questions can make things distinct. So when you look through the degrees, that's why I keep asking, what are people's questions? Because the development of the question is more important than the answer.
I think it's almost a part of the 1 to 3 too. It's like you knowledge it, you wisdom it, and then you understand it. I think that's part of the thing about learning even the 1 to 36. When I was learning it, it was almost like it was a movie to me. Like I knew it, and then I understood it, and then I started then I started to really just understand it afterwards when I just looked at it like it's step by step. You see what I'm saying? It was
Right.
It was like, even Darkina said that once before, it's like, okay, knowledge and definition, wisdom, and then understand them. And then I just think it goes like that all the way. It's just my opinion.
I see it, yeah. Wisdom to me is the usefulness, the using of that knowledge. Right? And sometimes it's a final test. Knowledge doesn't come in just one clip. See, what's confusing about knowledge, right? When we say one, is that in real life, one isn't just one piece of knowledge.
Right.
They don't come separate, in a package. So that's why you have to wisdom. That's why you have to wisdom that knowledge. You have to use it because it actually has many breakaway parts.
Right.
In real life, knowledge isn't just one piece. So many of the facets may not be true, may be conjecture, may be something that is based on opinion, but there may be something true in there that is necessary and right and exact.
Right.
So that's why knowledge has to be wisdom, And in that process, though, where do we have these forms to do it? You see, my role as the teacher is really to offer forums for the student to develop themselves. You know what I mean? And that's why I give you these tools that are very easy for everyone to use. Whether they like to use it for their life, right, or not, they'll have to learn how to communicate. They'll have to learn how to write. They'll have to learn how to, read. So all of these tools can be used to actually define your own abilities, right? The things that you're great at, right? That you found things you're great at.
Right. And your shortcomings too, though.
Exactly.
That's the key.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Because the thing about that, right? Like, let's say if I get the students to read and I get all you to read, you may find that may be a shortcoming, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But see, because it's a shortcoming doesn't mean that you get to say, well, I don't need it. Some of the shortcomings that we still have to engage in them. you know? And that's the problem with things, you know? That's the problems when we're talking about Quatis, we're talking about intentions and then what you're really trying to fulfill. You know, if we say that the original man is God, right? And say all the original man is God, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people creating. And then that's a lot, my creations are going to impact and they're going to collide with other people creating. You know what I'm saying? And so nothing is going to go cleanly, nothing is going to go perfectly. We also have the agitations of the devil. You know what I mean? Devil's doing devilishment, a structure that is engaged by devilishment. You know what I'm saying? And has us engaging in almost having to coincide with that. You know what I'm saying? Like capitalism. Okay, that's an example of a structure. Yeah, perfect structure. It's perfect structure. You know what I mean? Right?
That's part and parcel of the devil. Really.
Yeah, it's a perfect structure.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It gets to redefine what things are, meaning assets and capital. You know what I mean? It has you in a state of survival because you always have to continue to work to continue to live.
It really just substantiates and fortifies the 10%. The capitalist structure is more than any other structure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
More than the church, frankly, I think.
Yeah, it's their perfect structure. You know what I'm saying? It's their perfect structure. You know what I mean? Even the even the religious mindset, it goes hand in hand because part of religion is capitalism.
Right.
You know, if we really think about it, you know what I mean? But it's more like capitalism of that mind because now you've taken the mind asset and said it will stop working here.
You can get money too.
Right. But I'm saying on the theory, I'm just saying on the principle, the concept of what they are teaching the people.
Right.
They're actually turned the people into a limited asset.
Yeah.
Because remember, religion exists when people say, I've done all I can, and now the rest is up to, you know what I'm saying? So you can't really be fully religious unless there's a limit to the way you question and expect answers to develop. You know what I mean? There's always a breaking point. I did all I can, the rest is God's hands. You know, that's why I love to call it the glass ceiling, because they always call racism the glass ceiling, but that's pretty visible.
Women,
that's pretty visible. I banged into the doors of racism.
Even women, they can't get to a certain extent because they're
right. Yeah, that's not very glass.
It's not invisible.
They see it miles away. That's not really a glass ceiling, though. That's it's not really a good term, you know. But religion really is, you know what I'm saying? It allows people to stop searching.
Right.
When you tell people to stop searching, though, then that's actually when confusion would come about. You see? The student was asking me about chaos and confusion. Chaos is okay because we're clamoring to find something, to search for something. So technically, this idea where peace is the absence of confusion, that's not necessarily a state that will always exist. It's rather a state that is being made. That's why we say peace when we read each other, because it's not a state that exists by itself. We make that happen. So the reality of us living is us making that reality happen.
And how we react. Because honestly, some of the most peaceful times I had in my life were probably the most chaotic because I reacted the way I was supposed to. Like it is gonna sound crazy, but like even being locked up was like peaceful to me. It was like it was like because I knew this is how it's gonna be. I'm gonna get up in the morning. There's no unknown. You see what I'm saying? It's like I handled that. There was no unknown. It got chaotic, but how you handle that chaos kind of helps you with your peace. If that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, it's like the way I handle the chaos kind of helped me with my peace.
Because remember, like, you know, just simple. When the mind solves problems, your brain's telomeres actually grow.
Right.
So your mind, your body itself is favoring that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody.
Let me see what questions we have here.
All right.
6:45.
Okay, well, just stay in touch with me. I'm really glad that you're helping with the family.
Justice, you said, wouldn't knowledge come from diligently seeking it, and once one obtains what they're looking for, it is made born along with other things that are helpful in the quest for knowledge. Yes and no. But the truth is, a lot of people don't always know what they're looking for. Like, for example, most people, like when we talk about the neighborhoods here, right? The heart of Medina, right? Or we talk about Mecca here. A lot of the elders, for example, they didn't get knowledge of self because they were asking that question. They kind of just were given it. You know what I'm saying? They was around the way, they was doing dumb shit, and they got pulled over and said, listen, you know the black man is God. You know you're doing some dumb shit,
Probably
right?
doing something stupid at
Right,
that
right.
time. Like
Yeah, so
anybody.
that was never really in there. If God was up there, who cares? Like they were mainly who cares? You know what I mean? But it's when you're presented with the challenge of knowledge, right? The challenge that something might be knowledge. That's really what sets people apart. So every moment of the day, we're challenged with certain moments of massive knowledge. And whether we choose to deal with them or not, it's only that when we have knowledge of self, we become more conscious of it. Like, for example, we see ourselves as lifelong students. When you're a student of anything, though, you tend to be more conscious of when you're studying. You know what I'm saying? And after people finish school, that's why they don't read books or anything like that. It really dips, like statistics, people reading. A lot of people when they do these surveys, a lot of people don't even read one book the rest of their life, which is crazy. It's crazy. Even I find that to be almost untrue. It's crazy. But this type of encountering, not realizing that when you encounter knowledge, though, it's also how you make it born. Like, knowledge is presented to you all the time because we have to discern whether things are true or not. You see? So we're looking at things and saying, wait a minute, is that really knowledge? You know what I mean? Is that really true? And we decide to hold some things for later to see if they're true or not. You know what I mean? Right? That's where our observation skills come in, right? We remember certain things, we don't remember things, right? That's why, like, when I speak to students for the first time, they're coming to my classroom, right? I always tell them that you're always doing analysis of something. It's what you tend to remember and tend not to remember that becomes crucial. Sometimes we try to make ourselves remember things. There are other things we remember just because, but then there are things that we willingly want to forget and forget them. Then there are things that we want to remember and we forget them anyway.
Right.
So these are all things that we have to do the knowledge to. You know what I'm saying? How we make knowledge born. You know, how do we do the knowledge? You know, how do we remember knowledge? What types of knowledge they'll present themselves or we present ourselves to is also key too. As a student, you become more concerned about what knowledge you present yourself with, right? Did I go open that book? Did I go actually, turn up the TV and go do this, right? We're more concerned. It's more conscious. You know what I mean?
I think now retaining the knowledge is key too because so much is thrown at you.
Right.
I think what you retain is almost as important as what you hear.
Absolutely. This is a question that comes up a lot with students because they're like, yo, should I read all these things or not and everything? And I said it last week and I was with Inf Mega and he recorded a lot of it, but doesn't mean I won't repeat it. But I tend to favor overwhelming the brain with knowledge.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because once you have these materials that you're doing the knowledge to, you can always go back to see if, what's most important. Oh, I forgot this piece. Where is it? You know what I mean? And your mind will develop a way of remembering where things are that you don't have them. You know what I'm saying? Right now, people are doing that lazy. They use Google for everything. So if it's not around, I can just go back to the Google. That's not always going to help you get pieces of knowledge. Though. You know what I'm saying? And the more deep that we get, though, we may not even be able to make the right type of question in that search engine for what we're needing, let alone if it'll give it to us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Give us the reference or the resource that we need, But I hope that answers the question. I went on such a tangent that I don't even know. Yeah. But
yeah, P.E.A.C.E is deep though.
Yeah,
that's a deep thing because
remember the universe favors chaos.
Yeah.
So the universe itself is
it's built on it.
We created the universe to actually inspire creator. That's why I said creator creates creation and creation inspires creator to create. So that flow is always happening.
You see somebody, he does for 10, 15 years and he comes home and everybody's like, oh, he looks the same. Look, he looks the same. It's like, yeah, the real hustle and the real chaos is out here. You have your own set of circumstances in there, but once you know how to float through those, it's okay. But this is the real, paying your bills is rough. You know, working with the baby mothers is tough. You know, it's like, you know, that's the real chaos.
Right,
you know?
right.
It's like the belly of the beast is here sometimes, you know, when
That's
it's
right.
like they come home and it's like, yo, dude didn't age at all. It's like, well, you know, he learned how to do it, he did it. And it's just a much more, that's actually a more peaceful time sometimes than the streets.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that when you look at it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like that's a more
Absolutely.
peaceful time. You're sitting here and you're like, yo, how did dude come home looking like he's still 25?
Absolutely. And District, you said I always looked at knowledge as awareness. You know, in my own in my own plus lesson on Supreme Math, I did use that word awareness. The highest form of knowledge really is our created idea that is truthful, that is right and exact, that can be fulfilled. And that only comes about from an awareness of self.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And any activity that is keeping you more aware of yourself, though, is really what you're engaging for. That's why we deal with supreme mathematics. You know what I mean? So much so that I keep having to remind people that supreme mathematics doesn't make the true and living God. The original man as God always existed as a reality. It is supreme mathematics as a tool that expresses our reality. It defines and it reveals our reality to the world. And when we use it, then we express ourselves in even higher levels because it's such a simple format. You know what I mean? It's almost like saying, well, mathematics is God. No, mathematics isn't God. Mathematics is what is showing the computations of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The proofs, right? You know, so all of that is important, though. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that you can make it.
Yeah, me too. I stuck out.
Yeah. I never asked you, because I saw you with the knowledge, and I was like, oh, I thought he was white and everything like that.
Yeah,
I never
I'm
got
white.
your story about
I'm
how
white.
you got the knowledge.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I started with Dark Kim actually. I'm still learning, and I came here one day with Asia and met Dark Kim, and we just like, I never really went for a mystery God. I never really bought into the whole white supremacy thing. I understand that the white person is the core of the evil in the world. You can trace it back from Hitler to just all of it, and I always felt that way. I have a half original son. I'd like him to get the knowledge. I'd like to really just and I've really just been touched by it so much in my life that I thought it was finally time that I sat down and knowledge 120. I mean, obviously, I may never get past 6. I understand that, but I can understand and I can be an ally and I can help civilize other people.
And be a righteous man.
Exactly.
The highest degree. The
exactly.
highest degree.
So just be civilized myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's peace to the nation.
Because remember this, in the degree when it says the devil is weak and wicked, you've got to, if the devil is born weak,
right,
he has to do things to be wicked. Right.
Understood.
You know what I mean?
I heard you touch on that on the way over too. Actually.
Right. So that's very. I mean,
you can either go in and it's funny because my culture is this. I grew up around this. I grew up around the music. I grew up around the people and I've always just felt that this was really more my culture than maybe Christianity. It's just part of my culture. I understand it. And it kind of
see, the prerequisite to all knowledge of self isn't that the black man is God. That's the core truth,
right?
That emanates. But the prerequisite is that there's no mystery God.
Right, absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
And no matter what, when you're out there, you got no mystery God to call on too.
Nobody.
You know what I'm saying?
Nobody.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're black, brown, yellow, or white.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And all this is crucial. You know what I mean? And the thing is this, right? When we look at the devil, right? And the devil being made and stuff like that, you know? The original teachings at the mosque, you know, in the NOI, it had skunk in there for the colored man.
Right.
And when the father took that out, and he said that no animal's coming out of, you know, me.
Right.
And what that means, though, is that no matter what our reality is, each individual's humanity is not stripped.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I've always called the white man that gets knowledge of self the greatest rebel. Because he's rebelling against a whole reality.
A whole system that was set up for them to learn Christianity and set up for them to be subservient and set up for them. The only book that they were allowed to read was the Bible. Why is that? Why would you not let a slave read, but you'll let him read the Bible? Think about that. It's like it doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. That's another reason Christianity just didn't click with me. Mm-hmm. It's like, and my wife, obviously I have a half original son, so my wife is a black queen.
Right.
And she still goes to church and she still does that. And I try to explain to her that's the only book they let you read. Why do you think they let you read that? It was propaganda. In Russia, they're letting them read Russian stuff right now about how great it is what they're doing in Ukraine. They're not letting them read anything else. Why are they letting them read that? So I just never was a big Christianity guy. And to me, this is more my culture and more what I understand. It's obvious the black man is the original man. Obvious. Black doesn't come from white. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's what happened. And if they're saying, oh, Yakub couldn't do this and Yakub couldn't do that, but we're changing sexes now, bro. So what makes us think that you couldn't just split up the genes and make and genetically engineer something then? They built the pyramids then. I don't understand. It's like, oh, that couldn't happen. Nah, I'm like, this is really, before I ventured into this, I really did my due diligence. Mm-hmm. And as a white man, am I offended by what I'm reading? No. I'm really not, because there's case in points for every single thing along the way. Slavery came from the devil. It had to come from the devil. Look at this. I mean, it's just horrible. And who did that? And am I calling myself a devil? Perhaps. I have devilish tendencies. I think everyone does, white or black. And it's just a matter of knowing what I need to do and what I could have done and what I'm capable of doing. It's knowledge of self. It's a knowledge of myself in a different way.
Right.
Not knowing myself as a God, but knowing myself as a civilized person.
Absolutely. I can appreciate that. You know what I mean?
It's funny because Asia said I'm more militant than him. Because I really don't like any white people. Like, I just don't fuck with them. Like, I didn't realize how bad it was until I had a half original son during the Kaepernick thing. And then during the Black Lives Matter thing.
Right.
Because I've been making hip hop records for, my first record I made with Asia was 22 years ago. So this isn't new to me being into hip hop, but understanding just how fucked up white people are. They should shoot them for kneeling. You know what I'm saying? Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. All of that bullshit. It's like I really the last 10 or 12 years. My son's 17. He'll be 17 next month. The last 10 or 12 years have really shown me, man, that white people are fucked up. Whether I'm one or not, my own family fucked up.
And see, one of the realities though is that they don't have the knowledge.
Understood. They don't want the knowledge. They're okay with listening to the Pope say it's okay. They're okay listening to their church say it's okay. They're okay listening to their Republican president. Even the Democratic president at this point say it's okay.
He doing devilish too.
He just as bad. Those mandatory minimums, we're about the same age. You're a little younger than I am. Those mandatory minimums fucked up the Rockefeller laws, all that fucked up our entire generation, bro.
Actually. And
it's exactly what they wanted. Because like we talked about, the prison industrial system is just a new slavery. You need that for capitalism to work. You need cheap free labor and profiting from just the oppression of other people for capitalism to work.
Absolutely.
And that's just and I see that as a white man, and people look at me and they're like, yo, it's like, and I tell white people this. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it, but it's just objectiveness. I can objectively look at this and be like, wow, we're fucked up. And I say we because I can't separate myself. I can't say those they're fucked up. No, I'm white too. I gotta take heat for it too.
I hear that.
I gotta take heat for it too. And people are like, yo, are you crazy? I tell people, where you going? I'm going to class. Where you go? Class? I tell them where I'm going. They're like, you're crazy. Like, nah, you don't understand, man. It's not like that, bro. It's not like that. I'm trying to become civilized to civilize others.
You know, one of the things that I find that whites have difficulty with, right? And I'm not talking about devils that are just doing devilish shit.
Right, but understand.
But the
Just
average
people,
white
the average
person
white
trying
person.
to deal with this reality, you know, it's not like they're not all waking up going, yeah, you know, we're on top, you know, it's riding another day. You know what I mean? A lot of people think like that. But a lot of people generally going like, yo, this racist shit is a little too out of hand, and they don't really know. They don't know how their privileges kick in. You know what I'm saying? They may not see it. You know what I'm saying? And when they see things like critical race theory, or they see things like what is it, Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you see things like that, they don't really understand that when in looking at their history, they're not being told that they're racist every second of their lives,
Right.
or that they're born racist. They're being told that many of the things that you will do, right, racism will be furthered
It's on the back.
because of things that
It's
you're
on the
doing.
back of racism.
Right.
And it's on the back of racism.
Absolutely.
The entitlement that white people have in general, the entitlement that white people have really comes from being entitled. And they don't want to know that. They don't want to know that.
They don't want to feel that things
everything.
that they had that they're doing, you know, would be a totally different situation depending on the
100%.
original person.
100%.
You know what I mean? And that's something that if they did realize that and say this is not right and exact, this would change a lot of things.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
But they don't want to.
Right.
That's what they say, inconvenient truth. That is an inconvenient truth for them. They don't need to know that. They don't want to know that. And for me, I have no choice but to know that. You understand? Between my friends and my social circle and my son.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my son as a white kid with a black mom for many years. I really did. I'm being real honest with you. As a white kid with a black mom, he does okay. I do fine. You know, we live in a neighborhood, nice town, Jersey. Everything's great. But he's not. They're not going to know his net worth when they pull him over. They're not going to know where he went to high school, where he went to college, when they pull him over.
Right.
He's a black boy to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the cops see him, not as the original man, not as somebody who's a smart young kid. They see him as a black boy. That's all he is. Oh my God, put your hand on your gun.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what really is like, yo, you know, I thought I was quote unquote down. Oh, he's down. Nah, man, it's not. It's at a different level now for me. It's at a whole different level now for me.
Absolutely. And that's why we were talking about in the degrees, the 9th and 10th degrees in the 1 to 14.
Uh-huh.
You know, since you said you got through the 1 to 14.
No.
Okay.
No.
When people that get through the 1 to 14, nobody describes. This is my bill. Nobody says this. The 1 to 14 is really like a war manual.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It describes different scenarios of war, where we deploy whites when we get rid of them.
Right.
How do we deal with society as we structure it? So it's basically like MGT and GCC. Like, how do we deal with women? How our women must behave and deal with things at home and abroad. Once it says at home and abroad, that's wartime. That's at home and abroad. That not only means when they're outside the home, but also means when we're abroad.
Right.
You know, how will they be at home? How will they be here when we're not around, right? All these things. So there's a lot of scenarios and societal configurations in 1 to 14. And one of the main is we were talking about the 9th and 10th degree. You know, do we deal with them? Do we let them come around for 35 to 50 years and see and try and learn to do like us, right? Or do we just take devil's heads?
Right.
You know what I mean? And these can't coexist. They can't really coexist, these policies. And so the 1 to 14 is showing you all these different moments in history, in decision-making and choices that are being made. And for us, though, looking at 120, we have to decide, like, what is most valid? You know, because even this will be a decision for you as well.
Right.
As you deal with people that, look, you're white. So that means that there are more white people that you love. There's people in your family that you love. You know what I mean? That they may never get it. And then there's other youth that you're like, yo, they could probably get it. Like,
Right.
What do I do? What are these decisions? You know what I'm saying? And the 35 to 50 years is like, you have to take them through an entire lifetime because you don't know how they'll do in that society structure. And that's very valid for today because we're in the devil's civilization. Like, when things get hard, do they go the easy route? The way it is for us, though, if it's for original people, do we take the knowledge itself or do we go the easy way? Well, that's not always a worry, because the easy way is usually a destructive way that'll lead to our ruin.
Right.
It's the way the society is structured.
Right.
We go the easy way,
On purpose.
it's to our ruin, so it's no big deal, right? The easy way for the white man, though, has a potential
You can do okay.
for betterment.
You put it back on the rails.
You'll
you
be
do
all right.
okay,
Though.
You'll be fine.
You'll be all right, though. You don't have to, and you could go your whole life though without having to engage with the problems.
You can be 100% successful in this country as a white man and never have to deal with a black person in your life. That's the truth. You can't be really, really successful as a black man in this country without having to deal with a white person.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
100%. You could live in Iowa and be rich your whole life and never, ever, ever, ever have to deal with a
That's right.
and the whole Oklahoma thing kind of they were setting that out. They were stomping that out early. They were stomping that out early. No, there'll be no self-sufficiency here.
Right.
There'll be, and that's pure devils.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I have a couple of things. All right. Quatis, was the book of Exodus taken out of the Bible as slaves were learning to read? My Bible knowledge is not so good. There are books that they said were taken out, but I can't tell you the reason. I don't know. That's a question I have to go back to. So I don't even know. But from what I remember, I think it's still in there. I don't know. LPA crew said hi to everybody. I'm a Spanish person, and I want to learn the culture of the Papa, but my English is very bad. All the books, lessons, and persons I watch are in English. If any person read this, send to me a message. I'm going to put my email here, okay? My Spanish is not great enough to teach people the details of my understanding to the fullest, okay? But I can guide you to people that can, all right? Already, you're not a Spanish person, though, okay? Because you're not, unless you're from Spain. Okay, District, you answered that. It's the second book of the Old Testament. See, I didn't know that. Peace, Malik. Malik, how have you been building? What have you been doing? All right. Okay. You're very welcome. Remember, we're in May and everything like that. So, I was talking about health. Oh, my condolences, Malik. My condolences, Malik. You're the second student of mine that has his grand old earth return to the essence this week. So, wow. My condolences, May she be revered in posterity and remembered in perfection, I keep telling people early on in the year, I spent a lot of time talking about training protocols, working out, getting in shape, healthy. This is when you're going to need that. Make sure that we start detailing it. If we had the excuse that we couldn't go outside, now we can go outside and train. We can work out. You really should be training all the time. There should be no reason to go if you have training days to do and you don't work out outside. Only rain should inhibit you. All right, but if there's any questions about anything, health protocols, training protocols, right? I'm still training. Most likely the day I'll be training will be Saturday. I'm still training up at Staten Island, Fort Wadsworth. It'll be worth the trip if you're in the New York City area. Okay. And, email me for those rates. Email me for if you're interested in any of the books that I have. I also need more people to write. You know what I mean? Peace, True Divine. I also need more people to write for 5% Media. So if you wrote something and you want it published, I think there's somebody who wrote me something very good, but I don't know. I don't remember if they wanted it published. Because I have to write an article, at least a few things, and I haven't been able to. So even I'm behind. It's just so many things I'm writing. I haven't been able to do it, but to work on that. And it really helps if I can get other people writing. And if you want to write and don't know what to write about, you want to develop your skills, let me know. I'll guide you to something to write about. You know what I mean? All right, so that's right. So that's good to hear you coming along with that. Okay. Yeah, any specific questions you had? All these classes I've been talking and everything?
I just started delving into the 1 to 40. Again, you answered a real good question. He was asking, I had so much information. How do you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And that actually helped me just to think how I'm going to tackle it, because the 1 to 10 was actually more random. That was harder to memorize. The 1 to 36, you kind of picture as a movie. Like you can see.
Yeah, it's a script. Yeah.
Right. You see him coming. You see his uncle coming. You see the people that don't know. You see, that they traded the gold or that they work for the gold. Like you see the whole thing just go in phases. The 1 through 40 is going to be a little more difficult, but the way you said to break it down was good. I thought that was that's going to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'll help a lot.
Yeah. Because we're trying to group them in themes,
right?
And like, see, the thing I said about 1 to 14, that took me years to get to,
right?
So it's not how I memorized,
right?
You know what I mean? But if you find something useful, in fact, a lot of times the first time you memorize the degrees, they stuck with me a lot when I first memorized them, because I was able to articulate why I don't know anything about them.
Right.
And they helped me develop questions from my enlightener, knowledge me when I saw them, but they also helped me define, like, oh yeah, this is the one where I don't know about this. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes there are degrees I don't like either, and I remember them because I don't like them.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd be like, this
that makes
bullshit.
sense. And again, I think it's a three-pronged thing. I think you acknowledge them, you wisdom them, and then you understand them. I think it's a three. I think it's 360 lessons.
The pace is just faster with some and slower with others.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But as a student, to be a really good student is how to develop questions. The scientist in the lab isn't answering questions.
Right.
Everything that they do is based on what ifs.
Right.
And that's why I said the most important question to the creator is what if. Once you answer what if, you're trying out something.
Right.
So anytime you create something, you say, what if? You know what I mean?
Right.
What if I did this? What if we did this? And that's the question of creation. You know what I mean? And when you're looking at the degrees, you're trying to also figure out Elijah's language, Elijah's detail. One consistency throughout 120, except for the 1 to 36, is that you're getting Elijah's language.
Right.
So one thing that will help you is that, you've tapped into his grammar, which is, wrong. He has bad grammar, but it's like all bad grammar that becomes artistic. It's consistent.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's consistent. You know what I mean? And a lot of the ways that we speak, though, they wouldn't be so if we didn't have his grammar, the type of way that he speaks, all up in that. you know, because these are really his answers to the questions Florida's giving him, you know, and then they're answered consistently. That's why some degrees, like a lot of degrees in the 20s, are very similar. You know, I remember Firstborn Prince, he just was like, I always fuck up the 24th one because it sounded like, you know, and I was like, wow. I didn't say anything. I just listened. And I was like, wow, so it is possible to forget, you know what I mean? Like even him, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
It's just crazy how pertinent it still is. You know, he still fears the devil because the devil, you know, devil put fear in his heart when he was a baby. And it's like it's still grown men
this is
out
not
there.
this is something not uncommon though. With a lot of ancient texts of original people.
Right.
Because there's a lot of meaning laced in it.
Right.
And it's about mentalities. A lot of the degrees are about mentalities. They're not necessarily about things. Like I said, the 1 to 14 has a lot of directives that were done, but it's about mentalities. What was done to these people, right? That we took them through 35 to 50 years. The mentality. What mentality did they have? And what did we do to make sure their mentality stayed a certain way? We took devil's heads because of their mentality is this. When you define things by mentality, those types of works last endlessly.
Motivation,
you know what I'm saying?
mentality.
Look at the Dhammapada is filled with how you should be. That doesn't run out of, you know, that doesn't have a birth record, you know what I mean? It never dies, you know what I mean? So all of them are like that, you know what I mean? And then when you have texts that are based on looking inward, which is honestly a lot of the one, a lot of 120 is based on what we will think, like, who is that mystery God? That's an internal degree. Like, yo, when do we stop searching for that which does not exist? It totally isn't for, the question is always, when did God start to stop searching for that which does not exist? When did he realize he was God? All of these things. The truth is that these questions never stop. So it doesn't matter when it would start. It's when it would be fruitless.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
When the time is
right, because we're always exploring ourselves. So that technically, who's that mystery God? He would never have stopped and said, "Oh, I'm God. I'll never think about this again." No, he realized that everything is showing me that I'm the true and living God. I have to change the question so that way I can be productive in the next reality that I'm going to live right now. So what is it about us being God? Now that we are the supreme beings and everything we're doing has such a massive impact, it must be us. You see? So then now we can continue to ask questions. Well, how are we creating everything? See, it's the same type of question, but it's just changed differently. You see? So you're not searching for that which does not exist, but you're not denying that all of that exists.
Because it's still a part of
right.
society.
Right. Something had to be created and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So anytime you get to a point where the question is stifled, that's where you get the devilishment. Please God. That's where you get the devilishment. You know what I'm saying? That's where you get the stifling of the idea. No one can come with an idea if there's no question. You know, the question is the most brilliant thing ever. You know? The question. You know? Well, I always example one of the greatest scholars was Ivan van Sertima. And his collection of those African origin books, African presence books, African presence in early America, African presence in early Asia. I mean, these books aren't even digital, like unless people take, the photocopies are scanned, and they always take up mad space, and you have to vote. You can't really read them, but if you don't have them, that's the best way. But he collected all of these black scholars mainly, and answering questions about this. And people would think, well, he didn't really write all these things, so he's not as great. But it's the way he tied the books together and the questions and the idea of saying, like, these are what we were answering, and these were fully answered. And hopefully, he also would write down in his introductions to these books, what are some of the questions that do need to be answered? What's left out there? So the young scholar was being given something. You know what I'm saying? What is it? Even the father did that. It was one day when Firstborn Prince, he came and he was like, come here, he dragged me over. He said, you know how to write. We're going to fix this. And like a lot of degrees were wrong. You know what I mean? Actual facts had inches and it was computed by literally multiple. If I remember, I have a plus lesson on it. multiplying, I think it was yards and feet or something like that. Like two denominations, you know, that you can't. So you already know you're gonna get a wrong.
Mixed cases and
Right. So it was already wrong no matter what. And the answer was like 63 million something inches. And there's no such thing as inches of the planet Earth because the Earth is round. It's got to be squared, right? So little things like that. Now I'm saying like, well, these actual facts came later. They took it out of that, you know, the NOI, but they only took some and they tried to add others. And I said, why did they leave it wrong for so long? I said, our first officer. And he said, well, because the father knew that it was a good try to get it this far. And he said that the babies would fix it. And what he meant was like, you know, eventually one of the generations would come to fix it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the mentality of that. It's okay to have a question that you can't answer. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because that's what's going to be answered for the future and stuff.
No
like
one
that.
has all the answers.
You know what I mean? No, and we shouldn't.
Right.
We shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Because that means that we're not really developing. You know, that's why I would say the major teaching in my work in this classroom is the teaching of perfection. Something is perfect, right? And I don't know. I've been doing so, and I always use the same example, but to me, Cuban Links is perfect, right? Perfect album, right? They did everything perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's features, music, everything.
Production area, everything. Drops,
Right?
everything's perfect.
It's perfect, right? But because it's perfect, it's already finished.
Right.
So the original man cannot be perfect. He is not done yet. He is always imperfection. You see what I'm saying? So when I talk about perfection, it is what I call constant elevation at an ever increasing rate. But the real jewel is that the constant rate isn't linear. You see, it's one about asking questions. So it's not a linear rate where you're getting better and better and better and better. It's one where you're going back to go forward, going back to go forward, right? So like you have your child, right? He was born though, and he didn't know how to speak. He didn't know how to do anything. You didn't look at him and say, "Man, this is useless though. I got a kid that I made a child, but he's stupid. He doesn't know anything." No one does that. They're like, I'm going to show him all the things I know, and he's going to actually go back to get those things and progress.
You mentioned something else that was interesting on the way over. It's harder to teach a smart person than it is to teach a blank slate.
Right.
And you're right. Like as they get older, it's harder to teach them anything.
Well, there's the concept of what the Buddhists call the expert mind versus the baby mind.
Right.
The expert thinks they know it all, so there's nothing you can show them. But the baby mind is always inquisitive.
What they call tabula rasa.
You know what I mean?
The blank slate. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's really that concept there. You know what I mean?
Right.
But this constant elevation is really like is a cipher.
Right.
So it's not the expansion or the linear process of developing in perfection. It's basically the deepening of it all. That's why when you see the Son of Man is a revolving term, right? God is the Son of Man. So when God has a son, right, that is God, and he becomes a man. But then the man has a son, so Son of Man. So it's a revolving statement that shows you that the depth of reality is it's in the depth of the cipher, how deep the cipher gets. You know what I mean? And that's what I meant by perfection.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that definition came to me very, very early when I started to teach. And it became really the core of what would make me unique as opposed to all the older guys that were here and everything. Because obviously, when I was teaching here, everybody, a lot of the elders were here. You know what I mean? Colleen, Firstborn Prince, my Enlightenor was here teaching. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Darkim would come. At the time when I started to teach, Darkim wasn't teaching, but he was teaching. He had taught already.
Right.
So I don't know if you met Freedom, Understanding Seek Freedom.
No.
He's here. He's out there. He's Dominican, right? He used to teach here. A whole bunch of people. Darkim, obviously. Was it Born Perfection? He used to teach here. So everybody that taught here, I talked to them. Dumar, everybody, Wazamel, everybody. You know what I mean? And I was like, what would I be able to share? You know what I mean? And that's the reality that we're coming. What could we share? And this is relevant to you too. You see what I'm saying? This is relevant to you too, because not just having a son that's original.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Which means that even your seed, like you said, oh, he's a devil and everything like that. But even that culture seed has a humanity that can actually produce the original, because it went through the black woman.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So you made yourself, you know, Bob Marley. You know what I'm saying? Like Bob Marley, right? But this reality is the flow, right? That brings the fruition to everything. This reality of perfection, that we never are stand still, that everything we're doing is always developing and left for development.
Right.
So even as we leave, the mind, the thoughts and the ideas that we have left behind, right? They show our infinity because they'll still be built upon. When people go, listen, I like what he said, and I also add this too. Or they apply it to different things, right? Just like, for example, right? People are still being sparked by the things that Einstein, you know, thought of and experimented with, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Just like when I said Ivan Van Sertima, a lot of his ways of questioning things influenced the way I question things and the way I deal with that scholarly approach. You know what I mean? This is what that means. You know what I'm saying? So everyone has some type of place to do something extraordinary. You know what I mean? And one thing about humanity is that they can do things extraordinary. See, the devil, the original man, right? Think about it. Yaku said, I'm going to make a devil, right? But there was a reason for it. And a lot of people see an inhumane reason for making devil, right? But he gave the devil expiration date. So it's not necessarily evil. It's fucked up, but it's not necessarily evil. A Quran is 25,000 years long, right? It attaches to the solar year, which is 26, right? So it's about the same, right? So it's all linked in this way. The devil was made to exist and reign for about 6,000 years, right? That's barely a quarter of a solar year, right? Because a quarter, it's a little more than 6, right? So he basically funneled all of that chaos and confusion that was brewing as separation into a devilishment that would last about 6,000 years. Now, to us, though, that we've gone past 1914, it expired 1914. You know, the gods used to always go, no, we had a grace period of 50 years, and, you know, Allah came in 1964. But even still, we're in 2022, and it feels frustrating, right? Because we have to we're at another 50, right, on that shit. And we're like, fuck, it's over 100 years since 1914, right? But the reality is that has the truth now been empowered? And that's why it expired 1914, because this particular presentation of the truth was able to flourish. You know how they say that a truth buried will always come to light? That's not necessarily true, because what counts is the forms and the ways that the truth is coming, or else it'll be buried a very, very long time. This particular form of the truth actually took hold, because it's still here. It's still us doing this stuff. It's still causing a reality. You know what I'm saying? And if you look, this reality of defining ourselves, if you look, isn't this the main problem that is going to be in this century? Is not just racism, but the way people define themselves on all levels of humanity, right? So look at this. People don't look at what their reality is. They want to negate their roles, and that also means the roles that they play and have responsibility toward making the world better, right? They negate all roles and redefine them, but they redefine them wrong. So like, look, we have all these gender roles that they could flip-flop any day.
Yeah.
What people don't get is that when you do that, you also take away people's responsibilities.
Right.
You see? So if I was gonna say I'm heterosexual today, though, you know what I'm saying? But then now with that lifestyle comes the responsibility and possible responsibility of a family. Right? Ah, shit.
Yeah,
I'm trans.
I can't be the man I want.
I'm trans tomorrow, though.
I can't be the man I want.
Right, yeah. I had to be something else, though.
Right.
And it's always interesting, especially in the Western world, when these things denigrate and degenerate, that the new roles that are being decided upon and the new categories that people shift into all of a sudden have very little responsibility toward humanity.
Right.
It never works the other way.
How convenient.
You know, the roles that nobody's coming up with, we're a different, I'm a new human, and we are responsible for everything that has gone on in the globe. No, you don't get those titles.
Right.
You get the titles where, like, you know what, I'm this, and I don't have a responsibility to even know what I will like. You know what I'm saying? So now, like, this is the point, the whole gender thing, because it's now based on what you think you like, right? Which means, though, that you can't really be penalized for your likes and dislikes.
Understood.
And in a society, though, where your likes and dislikes are designed to get you in trouble, right? We deal with food immediately in this nation, right? You get rid of the pork, though, right? Unfortunately, people just stay with that, and they eat everything else that sucks, but they just don't eat pork, right? But you've identified a like and dislike. A lot of people that get rid of, and I've had students, they like pork, and I've had all these years teach. They go, I don't know how I'm gonna get rid of that pork, though, and I just, I have other students that just be like, damn, man, damn, you know what I'm saying? But people really liked it. But then when we get deeper into the diet, we can say, listen, you have to get rid of all that sugar, all this, whatever it is, if you're going to try to be this type of athlete, right? And like, I don't know, man, I don't know. Like and dislike. How do you master your like and dislike? If we look at this way the society is going today, it's about not having to justify or take responsibilities for the way our likes and dislikes take us. You see? And that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? That's a problem, because it means that we'll take less responsibility, because we won't define a role for ourselves.
The easiest road.
So we won't take a responsibility for the impacts of that like and dislike. So this is all important, because the way that we learn in this nation is the opposite way. This knowledge of self was telling you that who you think you are isn't really relevant either. So even that black seed that comes here and says, yo, I'm the true limit. Y'all say the black man is God, though. And I think I'm kind of like all that. So this works for me. And if you think that's a crazy idea, that's a quote. These are things people have said to me walking into this classroom. You know what I'm saying? Just all of the 85 coming from the street. They hear about this. They come in here, right? And that we know that that's not what it is. You know what I'm saying? That once you realize that you're the true living God, that's like, whoa, you have a big we have the responsibility to do all that we have and all within our power, right? When you look at all of these things in this kind of fashion, right? Then it takes this idea that when we do the knowledge to what we think we are, right? Then we're abandoning ego. These are not things I made up. But the way that we teach, though, is in such a way that is so simple. It takes into account all of the Asian texts. The Asian texts are all about yourself. If you read the Asian text as a 5%er, you'll go, this is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Because they keep telling you to get rid of yourself and who you are. What they're telling you is what you think you are is some bullshit. And once you get rid of that, then the real you will come, right? This is different for our nation to relate to those kind of writings.
But it's the same.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But our nation doesn't relate to it if they got knowledge, because they'll be like, no, I was told who I was first.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So then, but you're getting in the Eastern way of teaching is totally different than what Elijah Muhammad and eventually what the Father brought, which is a westernized way of teaching something that's coming from the East.
The personalities are so strong.
Right.
That you had to kind of,
and
you had to milk that first.
Absolutely, yeah. They taught in a westernized way,
right?
Which is totally different from the East. The East is about letting go of who you think you are, right? In Buddhism, it's called the Maya, the illusion.
Right.
When you get rid of all that.
But they like cattle in Asia too. They don't want an 85%. They want a 95% and a 5%, but their 5% is our 10%. They want the 5% to run everybody, especially China. They want that 5% to run the 95%. And that's it.
Right.
So they create a herd mentality.
Right. But let's remember that, like China, the country, though, doesn't deal with the principles of their ancient text.
Certainly not.
You know what I
Certainly
mean?
not. Certainly not.
Right?
1000%.
So if we
Yeah,
went through Confucianism, we went through Neo-Confucianism,
Right, right.
it would be totally violated.
Totally right.
Confucius would probably not make it
Yeah, what's going on over there
in
now?
today's China, you know what I'm saying?
Reprehensible.
Yeah.
Reprehensible.
And that's also too because they're imitating the devil. And you could always imitate the devil on a higher level. And they're doing a great job.
Great job.
They're doing a great job at doing that.
If you think if you think it's bad for poor and lower class people here, China's a whole different. They take it to the next level.
Indeed. All right, so questions here. What's a practical view of looking at the born degree and the 1 to 40? Born degree has to do with perspectives. So you want to look at the perspectives, right? This is where I would start with that. You know, I know I have to do this and I forget, but like in my notes, I think I wrote notes on some of these degrees. Oh, that's the culture degree. Even myself, there are certain notes that I think of, and I'm not even. Where is it? Okay, most of my notes for the 13th day. The practical way of seeing that is really about the born degree in the 1 to 40 is simply put, right, is adding on about the perceptions that the 85 have. You know what I mean? Why we don't get to teach them what their perceptions are. You know what I mean? Because they are it's a born degree. They born their own perceptions. They conceive their own perceptions and they make their perceptions their reality. You know what I mean? And they don't let us teach them. You know what I mean? So why? How do we get, it always reminds me in that degree, how do we get ourselves validated among the 85? You know that we have to do that with everything. How do we validate? When you teach somebody anything, if you're able to teach someone and you say, wow, I was able to teach him, you don't realize that you had to validate yourself. You may not realize it because you probably already are validated. Like when we teach our children, though, we've already been validated with their parents, right? But when you teach people out there, when you teach them anything, though, there's a level of respect that's happening somewhere that validates you. And sometimes we're not catching that from
I think
people.
that goes both ways too. I think a student has to be validated to the teacher, especially like some of the teachers here. If they're not feeling you, they're not teaching you. Right. So the validation I think has to go both ways. I think that's very important, and I think that we want to teach. We want to teach the people who are lost, but if they don't want to learn,
right, especially on the outside world. I always say in the classroom it's different for me,
right? Because
I also represent this school. So a student that I don't like, I wouldn't kick out,
right? Or
just be, passive aggressive bullshit, and so he could leave and shit, right? Which to me is real bullshit. But if they were difficult to teach, though, I would teach them that. I would teach them how they are being. You know what I'm saying? But there's always something that leaves someone. You know what I mean? When you're stuck in the situation. You know what I mean? But see, a lot of times people can't be taught, but you could give them an experience.
Right.
You see? So sometimes you can't teach someone, but you could deliberately give them an experience of something. You see? This is something that the evangelical knows. You don't, because they don't teach them shit, but they give them an experience. And that's why, like, the number one evangelist of truth was Elijah Muhammad. He had a lot of truth, right? But he was teaching it evangelically. So he didn't really teach everybody the depth, right? The average person that hears his speeches and stuff, he didn't really teach you that the original man was God. He didn't really teach you why the black man is the original man. They may not, I don't really understand. I don't know what he means by that, right? He taught it so evangelically. He left you with the experience of the way he taught it, the exclamation of it, the challenges, like saying, oh, I'll give you 10,000 G's if you prove me wrong and shit. You know what I mean? All these things like that. You're not really left with a lot of information that could be knowledge, but you're left with the experience of teaching. So it's always different things you can do with that. You know what I mean? But with the ninth degree is about teaching and perception, how the real things that go on in the world, right? Rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, and they are still not acknowledged as real things that must come from real events happening that you don't see. You see? So that sequence of events, you see what I'm saying? People aren't going, the rain is real, so what brought the rain must be real.
Right.
You see, and that's what we're so easily led, because we don't ask questions of the unseen. and that's why when we teach, we're actually trying to get them to see something that is unseen, the actual true unseen, so they can see what is actually the real thing to be seen.
As opposed
Right.
to the spooky unseen.
Right. Malik, you also said, when you say bunch 1 to 36, what do you mean exactly? I'm not really sure what I meant when I said bunch. But when I was talking about memorization, the 1 to 36 has a flow of a dialogue. You know what I'm saying? So if you try to catch the logic of when a dialogue shifts, then you'll remember those degrees. You know what I mean?
It was much easier.
Right? If you remember those degrees and stuff, that's what I was meaning by bunching. Hey, do for self. You said I appreciate you signing my book. I guess you bought a book for me. Okay.
We signed my book too. Thank you.
Divine, you said that this dissatisfied played a major part in the degree. Without them, there wouldn't be anyone to lead in the wrong direction. That was born through an idea that was predicted. Absolutely. You know what I mean? But see, there's always going to be unsatisfied, dissatisfied. Dissatisfied is different than, let's say, those who are not always satisfied. You know what I mean? Or because when you say dissatisfied, there is something particular that they may not even understand is bothering them, that is incomplete. You see? Whereas when we're dealing with the knowledge, and it's something also, again, in the Eastern text, they know that knowledge is infinite. This they explain as much, right? The Tao, definitely, in other texts. But they also know that even though you're on a quest for knowledge, you have to be content at every moment. So like all these disciplines, right? Like I do Kung Fu. I record myself, not really just to share clips. That's an afterthought. But I watch my own clips to see it. And I'd be like, most of the clips, I'm like, most of them, I'm like, that shit was no good. I did it wrong. You know what I mean?
I did that cut.
Right?
Yeah. Same day. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So I'm like, no, this could be better. Okay, I got to do it like that. Or I didn't have the right energy there. Right? All of this, right? You're seeing all these things, right? But even when I finish looking at it, I'm always content. You know what I'm saying? I'm always content because I know where I was. I know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? And if there wasn't more to be done, then what would there be to do?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's usually when the clips look really good that I'm like, oh shit, plateau. Like,
right. Where do I go next?
Boy, what can I do next?
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not gonna be able to, jump off a building.
And that's when it's good. That's when it's actually good to have people around you who make you,
Right.
Not who shit on you, but who really like just push you to be better, And I was like, guy, someone like that, and he was like, nah, that was good, but you could have this, you could have that,
right?
And
again, the what if,
right?
The what if,
right,
you know what I mean? What if the question of the creator? What if every time you create, what if is in your head?
Right.
If you can articulate these questions, then you can start to write your history in advance.
It's funny because when I have a bunch of joints to do, like if I have 5 songs I have to put cuts on, I'll bang them out. I can do 5, and as long as it takes me to do 1 when I have 1, because I'm so finicky about that 1. It's like, but there is no perfect. There is no perfect. And like you said, there's an unsatisfied and dissatisfied. You can give something away when you're dissatisfied with it, but you can't give something away if you're unsatisfied with it.
Right.
If that makes sense. Maybe I have it backwards, but you can't, I'm not going to send somebody a track that I'm completely unsatisfied with it. I like it, I'm dissatisfied with it. You got it. You know, but it's the same thing, and it's like that's the important part to me is like I have three people who really the knowledge. You now at Dark in Asia, and none of you are gonna be like, nah, you can skip on that. And when I was cutting, it was Rob Swift and Executioners. They're not letting you skimp.
Right.
I mean? Like there's no skimping in my circles. So that's important to me. But I can see like the 85 like the skimp, bro. It's just a skimpy.
We can say that the dissatisfied that Yakub brought in many ways were 85. So that means that the dissatisfaction, they didn't know what they were dissatisfied about. They were going along for the ride that he was bringing them on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's deep.
It's very heavy.
Yeah.
They didn't know. Malik, you said in the 38th degree and the 140, did we make devil to show that we had to make an adversary to juxtapose our power to prove as we are God and needed that as an experiment? No, I think it's generalized that yes, we made the devil to show and prove that we are God. But understand that we would always be doing things proving we are God. So it would be being proven deliberately or just because. So everything that we're doing is always proving ourselves, proving the greatness of ourselves, whether by default or by deliberate intention. You know what I mean? In the degree, it's obviously deliberate intention. We made that devil for a particular reason. You know what I mean? But there's also profound things in there. That even when we lost the knowledge of ourselves, we didn't lose who we actually are. I can't express how important that is to the experiment of life. Gandhi, he called his book, My Experiments, his autobiography, he called it My Experiments with Truth. I always like that title. You know what I'm saying? And you're right. Yeah. And as scientists, we experiment with ourselves. What do we do? Let's try this. Let's try that. It's always an experiment. So when we look at it like that, right? This idea of the experiment to say that even if we lost knowledge of ourselves, meaning the foundation and awareness of ourselves, we would still be that thing. You see? It's almost like a giant Schrodinger's cat in quantum physics. You know what I'm saying? Where you have the experiment where the cat is inside the closed box. You can't see inside. This is a thought experiment, the Schrodinger's cat. Right? Named after the scientist Schrodinger. And the cat is in a box with poison. Mm-hmm. But the poison, right, it could or could not have leaked out. So you're not sure if he's dead or alive, right? And like quantum physics, only when you observe do you find out if he's alive or dead. So basically, at the point that he's in the box and you haven't checked it, the cat is both. So according to quantum physics, though, and that's what leads people to be so confused with quantum mechanics, is that because it determines probabilities so precisely, in that thought experiment, the cat is alive and dead at the same time.
Right. You have to factor in that it is.
Right. It's dead or alive at the same time.
Right.
And that's what makes quantum mechanics so confusing. That's why Einstein said, God doesn't play dice, like he was pissed about it, you know what I mean? Even though his own experiments later would further help prove it, you know what I'm saying? But again, that's the scientist, right? You're asking questions, and stuff like that. You may not prove what you like. What you dislike may be proven to be true.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's what a scientist does.
Objectively.
Right. You have to deal with yourself truthfully. And that we would always come back to the truthful state of ourselves. And so that we are shown and proved that we are the true and living God, always has been, always will be. Because even when we lost the knowledge of ourselves, the entire spectrum of the laws of the universe that we created ourselves would take us all the way back around and be realized once again. And us right now is not the first time. I mentioned the ancient text so much, right? And people don't know. When I got knowledge of self, I started to learn Kung Fu with the gods at the same time. So it's two cultures that coincide completely to me. You know what I mean? And the Black Seed that taught us, Seagull and Bobby Whitaker, he also he's honorary 5%. He's not in our nation like that, right? But he taught all the gods. So all of us were students, right? And when I started to learn that, then I started to read the ancient texts and start to understand them more. Just understand them more as a fighter, but also having the knowledge of self. It really started to become very vivid. You know what I mean? And in the ancient texts, these realizations are the same as well, right? And so they have realized that man is God in many different ways. You know what I mean? Like I always like what's his name? John C.H. Wu's translation of the Tao Te Ching, right? That's my favorite. And there are 3. It's 81 aphorisms, right? Sayings of truth written beautifully. That's what an aphorism is. And 3 of them, at least 3 of them say, how do I know the world? How do I know all that is? Written in different ways. And the answer in each of those 3 was by what is within me. You see? So every time we lose something, if we come back and to see what is within ourselves, what is the nature of ourselves, we come back to the truth of what it is. You know what I mean? And the magic, right? The blasphemy, I get my trolls on me. But the magic of Yakub, right, is that by funneling this separation that we had developing, right, amongst ourselves that was leading to acts of war and things like that, which is really just acts of confusion, right, and separation, actually made this other man. But, and I'll say this specifically for you, is that despite the devilishment that he was designed to make, right, it's actually the rare humanity of whites throughout history that also helped to show this full coming circle. You see? So we could argue, and I'm sure brothers will argue, and they'll go, listen, no, every single righteous woman, they go like, fuck John Brown, fuck this. You know, they go throughout history and just be dissing all the white people that did something, right? None of them did something important enough to get rid of this devil civilization, right? But that wasn't the point. The point was that the fact that so many white people have levels of humanity means that no matter how much you dilute, try to destroy, and try to weaken the black germ,
There's still that righteousness,
right? Something will still be righteous in there that could still be mined. You see? Right. I find that to be an impeccable idea. It's not like we're in a world that there is 100% white devilishment. Right. It's not really the world that we're in. We're in more of a world that's gray, where most of the people, the whites, just like the condition of the original people, are in a condition of, man, I'm just following the way it goes along. Because look, I have these privileges, but if I go against stuff, you know, it'll only be, you know, I can't be Edward Snowden. I can't be, right? Right? How many Edward Snowdens do they say, look, there's devilish me. I'm gonna throw those documents out there. You know what I'm saying? Even the father had a build about Malcolm when the elders were going to his wake, and they were trying not to tell the father. Because, you know, they have like lots of parallels. Right. You know, they both left the mosque. But if you look at the parallels, not that they did this deliberately, this was their war. This is what they did. This is the warrior reality they led in different ways. But Malcolm X left the NOI and showed you the devilishment of the white man, the white structure, the westernized world. That's what he was about. He was about showing it to you. And if that's what they do, and we fight against that, right? Battle of the bullet. The father, so it's right. It's not wrong. Right. But it's what I call a negative build. In other words, it's negative because I'm telling you what the devil's doing. The father had a positive build. He left though, and he said, I'm going to teach the babies. I'm going to tell them who they are. I'm not going to worry so much about where the devil is. You see what I'm saying?
Clean up here first.
I'm telling you who you are, right? Which is a revolutionary statement by itself, you know? He went from like human civil rights, which is not even human rights. He skipped human rights and went all the way to, oh, black man's God. Boom. Right? When they were trying to go to the wake, Firstborn Prince told me a story. When they were trying to go to the wake, they didn't really want to tell him, but he knew that they were a little too dressed up.
Right.
And he said, you're going to see him, right? He said, yeah. You know, he didn't stop him, you know, but he said, you know, he was dead already. And he didn't mean that he was 85. He meant that he spent his time telling the devil that they're the devil.
He knew it was coming.
You know what I'm saying?
It was inevitable.
Right. And the Father said, we're not spend time telling the devil who he is. We spend time telling us who we are. Because they didn't really lose the knowledge of self.
Right.
See? Now that's not exactly what Malcolm was doing.
But that was the
Right.
that was the way to go in
But he
hindsight,
would-
because he had allies. He ended up having allies that really helped build.
Right.
Building.
And it's funny, the parallels, because the Pan-Africanism that he dealt with was really the same thing that the Father was dealing with, saying who all the original people are and showing us all the black, brown, yellow seed. Because that terminology, black, brown, yellow seed, that didn't come from anybody else but the Father. So when you go through the speeches, the text of Elijah Muhammad, he showed you and told you who the original people were. You know what I'm saying? The Nation of Islam made links with the Japanese, especially during the World War II and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? But the most overt connections between all of the original people was being made by the Father. You know what I mean? Even to like little mandates of how we build, like, yo, black seed ought to always be rolling with a brown and a yellow seed, you know? And he gave perspective, you know, even in a social setting, that's powerful. You know what I'm saying? Because let's say if I go out with the God of Mara, who's a black seed, right? We're going out there, right? Or it could be me and Darkim or something like that, right? The society can hate us both. But depending on where we're at, though, right? I may get more allowances. I don't call them privileges. Original people don't get privileges. But we get allowances, though. You know, where I could deal with you a little bit more than I could deal with black seed. You know, and that's always the case in racism. You know, it has to be by levels, because you don't want everybody united. It has to be by levels, you know. The caste system in all types of levels. We just don't have it over here. We just have it by insinuation. People's likes and dislikes are so ingrained. Well, I'm okay with him being a little bit lighter. You know what I'm saying? Peace, God.
Peace.
Right? And I'm not okay with him because he's a little too dark. He's a little too, might be violent. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So all these things, people are like that. You know what I mean? Right? But when we show and prove that we're the true and living God, when we show and prove ourselves, it is in the reality that we're in. And in the reality that we're in, though, we are showing and proving ourselves by destroying the devil. That's why we destroy the devil's civilization. When his structures can be overcome. You know what I mean? Right? And don't take away for our humanity, right? Because that would be the case, right? Malik asks, the devil was predicted by who, right? When we read the degrees, the 1 to 14, talking about the 24 scientists, right? That shit is so mysterious, especially the more and more that NOI and others talk about it, the more that shit sounds mysterious. Like there's a mount somewhere, exotic place, you know what I mean? But to me, the best knower is always that concept. The best knower in each particular situation. And when we look at ancient times, we have to look at best knower in a totally different mindset. I'll give you an example. The pyramids have been, right? We mentioned the pyramids before, right? All these wonders of the world, there's only one you could go to, right? When they do the 8 wonders of the world, there's only one you could actually find and say, oh, it really existed. Everything else is conjecture. If you really want to be an asshole, it's the Pyramid of Giza. Now, this is a building. Let's just call it simple. Building, right? That has been up for thousands and thousands of years. Today's society doesn't have the wherewithal and the ability to build something that they can guarantee will stay up for thousands of years. You know what I mean? All the structures we see now that are 100 years, they have to be fixed up. They're pretty much useless, right? And they're the artifacts, really, right? And the upkeep is like a lot, right? They have to be like, you know, crucial to the societies, you know what I mean? The history, right? In order to create something like that, right, you have to know the history in advance. You also have to understand the weather patterns, what will exist, what type of reality that this building will go through for a vast amount of time. You know what I mean?
Being
So-
waterproof wouldn't matter because it's in the desert.
Right,
But
right.
windproof and sandproof is the key.
Right. And we could even go further because these places weren't always sand at the time that they were
Right,
made.
that's true. Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
the fluctuations of time.
Right.
So we might have even had to predict
Right.
the change of that
How's it
weather.
gonna be?
Right? So when we talk about the ancient times and we look at ancient times, and I always say like perspective, right? When you study ancient times, right? I always tell the brothers when you study ancient history, you the reader don't know a time when there were no white folk. So even when you read about ancient civilizations, we have to try to get into their head
Right.
that we've never understood. Just like we do with any history book that we weren't there for. But this is exaggerated.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because we don't know the effects of westernization. We don't know anything. What could life be like without the effects of westernization? We don't even, it's incomprehensible, right? So now when we look at this, how amazing was their technology? That means that we also have to think about their best knowers. The best knowers that knew about things, they had a lot more information. You know what I'm saying? So we could say that they had a higher level of knowledge as far as what they were dealing with. Maybe some of it would be incomprehensible to us, we have to admit, right? So when we deal with like 24 scientists predicting Yakub and stuff like that, right? The truth is that Yakub is a social reality. His reality is a social reality, what he caused. And the winds of time and how society was going was very much at their grasp. Because the Egyptian mystery school system, right? When you read about Stone Legacy and things like that, they talk about the Egyptian mystery school system where all the world went to learn. But the Egyptian mystery school system, to me, I like the term better to describe it to students, is an intranet.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to collect all of the knowledge that all the original people have done once they migrated everywhere. These migrations were important because the distinctions between black, brown, and yellow are made by these migrations. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not staying there for like a couple of years and then they go back. Like humanity doesn't fluctuate that distinctly anymore because we can travel anywhere. And because of westernization, we even have like the same products. Like we're eating some of the same shit that people across the globe are eating, which
Starbucks in China.
yeah. So we eat junk, they're eating junk, you know what I'm saying? Like, but even good things, like we could eat spices from India and shit. We get everything that we want, right? Like, it's crazy because, right? My post-workout meal is quinoa.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even something that we should be eating.
We didn't even know what it was.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't even know what it was till like I heard about it when I became vegan in the mid-90s. You know what I mean? So these are things from South America, right? So what the Egyptian mystical school system, that's what scholars call it today. But to me, it was really like an intranet to try to collect all of the knowledge that has been developing everywhere in the world and try to coincide with that. I think during those times, right, is when they started to realize that the separation between all these peoples was intense. And maybe it is possible as a scholar that maybe the Egyptian mystery school system was slightly a failure in its objective, and that the alternative became Yakub making the devil. Because the only way to bring the seeds together would be to officially separate them by having someone else in charge of them all, by having someone else rule that is other than them, so they could realize that they are who they are. You know what I mean? So it's an intriguing thought. These are thoughts that I built on a lot. So this is why the scholarship is just in infant stages. You know what I mean? Most of Black scholarship, especially ancient African scholarship, historically, is just saying, "Oh, we did it first. We were here first." But from that moment all the way, well, what happened all here? Well, what happened to all this? Like everything in the middle is not there. You know what I mean? These are things that people like Chancellor Williams, who wrote Destruction of Black Civilization, others, they didn't get to. Cheikh Anta Diop didn't get to write all these books. You know what I mean? But for the young out there, for those who are interested. These are the places that we can go, you know, with these ideas, you know. But that was a long, drawn-out way of answering something. The devil was predicted by who? And that's why I was saying, when we say the devil was predicted by who, it's the patterns of life, you know, and they were seeing that separation. So it was predicted by us a long time ago. It was us seeing something's wrong here. And we either funnel this into some reality or something else is going to rule us. See, we say, oh no, they made the white man to rule. No, but that mentality was already starting to rule. A mentality of separation and the exploitation of that separation, right? Because that's what we're suffering from, the exploitation of the separation, you know? Still, right? Malik, you said awareness of what's born is depending how I build and destroy if it will be fruitful to add a positive impact to the cipher, right? Knowledge born, all being born to knowledge add on the cipher, right? I see it. Do for self, you wrote original alpha. That's Peace, God. I always forget who you were. You know what I mean? Power born, peace, God. Peace. Unseen doesn't automatically mean invisible. Keep them thinking caps on. Absolutely, God. Who predicted Yaqub would make devil? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You know what I'm saying? I predicted the making of a lot of bad music, and I had no hand in that music. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. I hate reggaeton, right? And I'm one of those Puerto Ricans that hate reggaeton, and I'm proud of it. In the mid 90s, they had Playero and stuff, and I was saying that they're not teaching them how to make hip hop music, so they're making it badly. Right? Not sell out shit, but they're just making it badly. That's what makes reggaeton, because they don't know how to make music, so they're informed by the music that's around them.
You know what's funny, dog? Kim and I sat in front of there one night. We actually couldn't get into the Apollo because we didn't have back in nation cars. So we hung out in front of the school and just talked about music. And we ran through the math, and there's no hip hop culture now because they didn't do the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding, so they never got to the culture. And if you look at the bad music that's out there, they never understood how to make hip hop. So
it's easier to see it with other nations, though. Because I remember in the mid '90s, Crazy Legs, Rocksteady, they were trying to go out there and show it. You know what I mean? Also happens to do though how you're educated to the culture.
100%.
Because Cuban MCs are generally more lyrical.
Right.
But they sell out when they come to Miami.
Right, but they never learn. But they never, if you don't learn those steps,
right,
they have a culture.
In Puerto Rico, they were making hip hop music, but it wasn't that well done. Right. It wasn't sellout shit, but it wasn't very well done. Right? They didn't have people to show them and stuff. Remember, hip hop, you know, in the 90s, though, it's not easy to make a hip hop beat like people think. You know what I mean?
In the 80s.
Sampling is not,
harder in the 80s.
Sampling is not so easy and shit like that. You know, DATs, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's very,
chops.
Right. It's not like today's chops is. Ridiculous. Yeah, you could easy today. You could make what you think of.
It chops itself.
Right. You could,
as you're sampling it, it chops itself.
You could make what you think of easier today than back then. You could think of something and not be able to make it.
Certainly.
You know? And when they had these Playero records, it was mixing in the diluted versions of what they thought music was. Mm-hmm. And that's the salsa, because salsa was already diluted by the 80s. It was no longer like militant. It was no longer right. And that ethos is coming from New York where it developed. So when it goes out to Puerto Rico, by the 80s, it's syrupy. It's all love songs, right? Everything, right? So it takes that Caribbean mode that everything has to be party, party, party. So then now the lyrics just become what's the party about? And then the DJs, they're like, yo, I get way more people to dance to this than that, because that's what people expect and stuff, instead of just straight rhyming and shit, which is totally foreign. Mm-hmm. And it would be almost like a new plateau introducing it, right? That's how reggaeton comes about, and nobody that writes about reggaeton will admit that. You know what I mean? And that's why you have that's why you have the same dembow beat, you know, the same beat. It's easy to make the same beat again and again. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then add flourishes as opposed to do something totally different.
And the same thing is going with the trap and the drill now. It's
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
exact.
It's the same exact beat. And I'll say that it's possible that the industry, they appreciate, but also people are being informed by reggaeton. That's probably true that trap and drill are informed by reggaeton.
Right.
That you could make something addictive and not really do much to the beat, like not really do that much. It's
There's no culture.
It's a lot of
It's cultureless music, unfortunately.
right, because there's no challenge to make something that was never made before.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Right? It's enough that a genre itself has things you do the same, but to make the same exact beat and just different frequencies, it's just
and to compare someone like Cream chopping beats to somebody chopping beats now is just completely. It's completely off the wall.
Right. You know what's interesting, right? Is that Primo has the beats that people that don't really listen well, they say that's what hip hop beats sound like, and his sound all the same. But if you notice, he chops so well that you never know what he's sampling.
No idea.
You don't know if he's sampling a jazz record, a soul record.
Unless you know the record.
Right, yeah.
Unless you know the record, like the Screaming Jay Hawkins song, you knew what
Right,
it was.
but that's like a really popular one for him. That's an easy one for him.
But otherwise, you have no idea what it was. It could have been a big band song.
Right. That was for Biggie, right?
Yeah.
But that's where you would get the easy sample. That's probably why I use it, because he's doing it for Biggie.
For Biggie, it's mainstream.
With Puffy.
Right.
But I could clear that.
Right.
If he uses it for Gangsta, he may not be able to clear it anyway. Right? But did he clear anything? He's clearing Barry White. So who cares? If you clear Barry White, you clear everybody else, right? But
Minnie Riperton is his artist.
right.
Minnie Riperton's estate was the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything from Minnie Riperton.
Minnie, Barry, they always
were
were.
getting it.
Like
and Prince, of course. Prince was.
Right, Prince, yeah. But it's crazy. It's crazy like that. You know what I mean?
I'm up. I gotta get back. I got an interview actually. Bro.
Oh man,
It's a pleasure.
great building.
Oh, for sure.
No doubt.
Appreciate it.
Keep in contact.
Appreciate it. Peace.
You know what I mean?
Peace. I'm gonna send you some.
No doubt.
Peace, man.
All right, peace, my brother. Good questions here. I would be done at 8 though, but I'm gonna keep going because these questions are excellent. Malik, when on the island of Patmos, where they're black, and brown and yellow, yes, because there's a whole society. You cannot separate the society if the society didn't exist. You know what I mean? So the society had black, brown, yellow, but they are separated in how they are told to breed, and they are bred in a certain way to extract. You know what I mean? Not extract the people, but a way to breed that the likelihood of what they born can be extracted. You know what I mean? Right? Incredible question here, Malik. And I know it's a hard one. How do you deal with one going back to the essence? I celebrate the life as it is on this physical realm. I always say remembered imperfection. You work to remember who they were. You know what I mean? You deal with all the emotions that come with it, though. So if you cry, you cry. If you laugh, you laugh. And you also do things. You try to remember that what they would love you to do. The great things that they wanted for you. You remember those things and you do as they would. You know what I'm saying? One of my people's, Doc Ock, returned to the essence, and that's why I missed one of the classes late April, the last week of April. And he did so much in hip hop, and he's Boricua, he came from my neighborhood, so we're very, very, very close ties in that level. And it was great to see a brother that came from where I came from do so much in hip hop. So when I remember him, though, I enjoy the things that we did, but I also enjoy the things that we love even more. I enjoy hip hop even more. That's the way that I honor him, though, as if I could love hip hop more. You know what I'm saying? When my old earth returned, though, my old earth was about hard work, good work, sincere work, thoughtfulness. She's the one that taught me the first great teacher I had. So I try to instill those things, you know what I mean? And so I miss her. I'll still cry if I have to. You know what I mean? My oldest born day is May 13th. So Mother's Day and her born day are oftentimes they coincide. And that's why I say you remember imperfection. The best parts of them, though, you're here to share it with someone, to keep it alive, you know, and it's very important. You know what I mean? Right? How do we deal with them? We have to be honest with ourselves, you know, that we are struggling with it all. You know what I mean? And we have to be honest with the love that these people gave us that we won't allow us to not, you know, we know that they never wanted their deaths to stop us from building. And so we can't. And so we can't. Right? Gully Woo, you said, what about Vico C? I never cared for Vico C. I always thought he was very average, but he actually was an MC. And so Vico C is a perfect example of what I meant by average to just good music that was on the island that was like pure rapping, you know? So much so that it engulfed other guys who were even more talented, like Tego and others that really could rhyme, but they were forced to do reggaeton music, you know? It's going, you know what I'm saying? All the struggles and a lot of work, you know? You know, hopefully some more prospects and building, and that's what it is. All right, so a couple of more things here, and then we could close it out, right? It never was not a potpourri of people because the black, brown, yellow always existed. The distinctions between the realities of our genetics were always there. It is where original people live for long amounts of generations, right? For generations upon generations that define their physical features. You know what I mean? Right? Seven actor magnificent awareness brought forth strengthening foundation with my reality. Appreciate the time. Likewise, 793rd. Likewise. You know?
We'll see what happens tonight. Huh? No. Unless you trying to set the news.
Absolutely, you have to. You have to. You know. You know, all of us are creators. We're all the true and living. We know that the black man is infinite. We know that mind is always here. But you know, we also live. We also feel. We also love. You know what I mean? We engage with the world. You know, so it's okay to feel things and be aware of that as well. You know. You know. So on that note, though, understand how you feel. You know what I mean? Study yourself. Right? Be honest with how you feel. And if it's not right and exact, have the power to, you know, change that. Powerborn, you said you ever get frustrated with teaching yourself. How do you work through those thoughts? When I'm frustrated with teaching, I usually teach a good class. I've been coming to teach you this long. What's right? You know, hundreds of classes. You know, hours and hours. So the frustration doesn't come out in frustration. It just comes out in tired.
I don't get frustrated because if people don't get it, it doesn't really bother me and stuff. You know what I mean? If I felt I did all I could and all within my power, then I know that the week that follows, all I'm going to do is spend more time learning new things and trying to learn how to explain them in detail to myself. So I'm always learning to equip myself to be an ever-present teacher. So I don't really get frustrated. I get tired of teaching, but it's more akin to like tired of training or tired of working out, tired of reading, tired of things that you love. You just get tired. That'd probably be the best way that I would answer that. You know. That whole society the devil was made, though, was a mixture of original. That's why he was able to give the roles to different people, right? And then extract them and start to cause that structure of separation, solidify it to a usefulness. Does that make sense? All right. Let me know if it makes sense. That way I can, we can end this session. All right. If anything, email me. If you want to write into 5% Media, email me. It's all about endurance, you know. It's all about endurance, you know. You're no good at something if you can't do it when you don't want to do it. You know. If you can only be good at something when you feel like doing it, then you're no good at it. You know. Right? I can read when I don't want to read. I can write. I definitely can write when I don't want to write. You know what I'm saying? Definitely can fight when I don't want to fight because I never want to fight. Right? And can always teach and share when I'm just not in the mood to share. I'm just not in the mood, you know? Right? So I hope that makes sense. All right. With that said, though, I'm going to let everybody go. Just build. All right. And I will see you all in emails, contacts. Hopefully I'll see you online in social media, or I'll see you back here. Peace.